Okay, so picture this. Neo-Tokyo, 2035. Cryptocurrency is everywhere, right? It's like totally normal. But beneath the surface, there's this whole hidden history, a legacy that goes back to the very origins of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, most people just see Bitcoin as, an investment or a way to buy things online, but it's so much more than that. It's a whole philosophy, a movement, really.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to deep dive into today, right?
Mm.
The story behind Bitcoin, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto, the whole shebang.
Right. And we've got some fascinating sources to help us unpack all of this. We've got academic papers on cryptography, the cypherpunk movement, even some, well, let's just say unconventional accounts of Bitcoin's early days.
Yeah, some wild stuff out there.
But
But hey, that's what makes this so interesting, right?
absolutely. It's a story full of intrigue, mystery, and even a bit of danger, if some of these sources are to be believed.
For sure. So where do we even begin with all of this? Maybe with Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, that's the big question, right? Who is this person or group of people who created Bitcoin?
Well, the thing is, we might never know for sure. Satoshi's anonymity is one of the most intriguing aspects of this whole story.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a puzzle, right? People have been trying to crack the code of Satoshi's identity for years. Some think it's a single brilliant mind. Others believe it was a collective effort.
And there's evidence to support both sides, which is what makes it so fascinating. But before we get too deep into the mystery of Satoshi, maybe we should step back and look at the context in which Bitcoin was born.
Okay, yeah, good point. So rewind to 2008. The world is in the midst of a massive financial crisis. Banks are collapsing, governments are scrambling. There's this widespread sense of panic and distrust in the system,
Exactly. And it's in this climate of fear and uncertainty that Bitcoin emerges.
like a beacon of hope.
Well, some say that. Others saw it as a threat, a challenge to the established order. But either way, it was a radical idea, a digital currency free from government control, operating on this revolutionary technology called the blockchain.
Okay, so hold on, let's break this down a bit. The blockchain.
Yeah.
That's like the backbone of Bitcoin, right?
Exactly. It's a decentralized public ledger that records every single Bitcoin transaction.
And decentralized meaning.
It's not controlled by any single entity like a bank or a government.
Yeah.
It's distributed across a network of computers all over the world.
Okay, so it's like super secure.
Extremely. That's one of the key features of blockchain technology. It's virtually impossible to hack or manipulate.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it. And this whole idea was born out of the cypherpunk movement, right? Our sources talk a lot about them.
They do. The cypherpunks were this group of activists and cryptographers who believed in the power of cryptography to protect individual privacy and freedom.
Yeah.
They were kind of the philosophical forefathers of Bitcoin, in a way.
They saw what was happening with centralized systems, the potential for corruption and abuse, and they wanted to create something different, something better.
Precisely. They believed that cryptography could be used to empower individuals, to give them more control over their own lives and data.
And Bitcoin was like the ultimate expression of that vision.
It was a currency free from censorship, manipulation, a true peer-to-peer system.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about this Genesis block. It's kind of legendary in the Bitcoin world, right? It's like a foundation of everything.
It is. The Genesis block is the very first block of the Bitcoin blockchain, mined by Satoshi Nakamoto themselves.
And there's a hidden message in it, right? Something about a bank bailout.
There is. It's a coded message that references a headline from the Times newspaper published on the same day the Genesis block was created. The headline reads, "Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks."
Wow, that's pretty pointed, wouldn't you say? A clear statement about the motivations behind Bitcoin.
Absolutely. It shows that Satoshi was deeply aware of the flaws in the existing financial system and was determined to create an alternative.
It's like they were sending a message to the world, saying we're building something new, something that can't be controlled or manipulated by the powers that be.
And that message resonated with a lot of people. It still does.
For sure. Okay, so back to Satoshi. Our sources dive into some pretty wild theories about their identity. Any favorites?
Well, it's all speculation, of course, but some of the more plausible candidates include Hal Finney, Nick Szabo, even a group of developers working under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto.
Right, right. But like you said, we may never know for sure, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the mystery is part of what makes Bitcoin so compelling.
It definitely adds to the mystique.
It does. Okay, so we've covered the origins of Bitcoin, the cypherpunk philosophy, the Genesis block. But what about the future? What happens next in this story?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Bitcoin is constantly evolving, adapting. It's hard to predict what the future holds.
True, true. But our sources do mention these dormant wallets. It's like something out of a cyberpunk novel.
It is. These are wallets that haven't been touched since the early days of Bitcoin. Some believe they belong to Satoshi Nakamoto themselves.
And they're like time capsules, just waiting to be activated.
Exactly. And the question is, what will happen when they are? Will they be used to further the original vision of Bitcoin? Or will they be used for something else entirely?
It's like a ticking time bomb in a way. We don't know when it will go off or what the consequences will be.
And that uncertainty is part of what makes Bitcoin so fascinating, so unpredictable.
For sure. Okay, so before we wrap things up, maybe we should connect this back to our listeners. Why should they care about all of this? What's the relevance today?
Well, I think the story of Bitcoin is a story about power. It's about who controls the systems that govern our lives and how we can use technology to create more equitable and resilient systems.
It's a story about freedom, about individual empowerment, about challenging the status quo.
Exactly. And it's a story that's still being written. Each of us has the potential to shape the future of Bitcoin and, by extension, the future of finance.
Wow, that's pretty powerful stuff. So, to leave our listeners with something to ponder, one of our sources, it tells this fictional story about a young coder named Akira who stumbles upon one of these dormant wallets and uncovers the truth about Satoshi.
Right. It's a fascinating story, even though it's fictional. It raises some interesting questions about the legacy of Bitcoin and the responsibility that comes with wielding such power.
Like, what would you do if you were in Akira's shoes? Would you use that power to change the world? Or would you keep it hidden, protect it from those who might abuse it?
It's a tough question, and it's one that we all need to be thinking about as Bitcoin continues to evolve and become more integrated into our lives.
So, to all our listeners out there, what do you think? What would you do with the keys to the kingdom? Food for thought as you continue your own exploration of this incredible and ever-evolving space.